The marketplace of Terran Prime was alive with colors, sounds, and scents that no human city could ever match. Traders from 50 worlds shouted the value of their goods. Glowing crystals hung from stalls like caged stars, and alien perfumes drifted in the hot air. Amid this chaos walked Daniel Hawley, a human who had never meant to come this far from Earth. He had only wanted work, a chance to trade, maybe to forget the wars that had torn the colonies apart. But fate had carried him deeper into the galaxy, and now he found himself standing in the middle of a crowd, where every eye seemed to measure him like a rare and dangerous animal. Humans were still new to this corner of the stars, still feared, still whispered about. Daniel had learned to keep his head down. He wore a plain jacket, leather scuffed by years of travel, and kept his hands loose at his side like a man ready to fight. Trouble always found humans, and he expected no different today. But what he did not expect was her. She appeared through the crowd like a light that drew every gaze. Tall, graceful, with skin that shimmered like polished emerald, the alien girl moved as if the noise and press of the market bowed away from her. Her hair, long and flowing like a river of green fire, caught the sun and made strangers stop mid-step. She wore silver-threaded cloth cut to her shape, with patterns that seemed to glow faintly with energy. And her eyes, bright as twin jewels, locked onto him the moment he glanced her way. Daniel froze. The market vanished in that instant, leaving only the girl and her steady gaze. She walked toward him, not shy, not hesitant, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had chosen her path long ago. In her hands she carried an object, a small bowl-like vessel made of crystal and metal, inside of which pulsed a soft green light. The air around it seemed warmer, heavier, as if the gift itself had power. She stopped in front of him, holding the vessel up with both hands, and spoke in a voice smooth as glass, yet strong enough to carry over the noise. He could not understand the words, not fully, but the meaning pressed into him like a weight. She was offering it to him. Daniel had been a soldier once, and soldiers learned never to refuse a gesture when they did not know what it meant. Offend the wrong person in the wrong place, and blood would spill. So with a half smile and a cautious bow, he reached out and took the vessel. The green light shivered under his touch, and for a heartbeat, the whole market seemed to fall silent. He thought it was only a trade gift, a token of peace, maybe a merchant's trick to draw attention. But when he looked up, her eyes had changed. They softened, glimmered, and for the first time a true smile touched her lips. The crowd around them began to murmur, not in confusion, but in shock. Human. Someone whispered in a tongue Daniel did understand. He has accepted her bond. The words crawled under his skin. Bond? He frowned and looked back at the alien girl, but she had already stepped closer. Standing so near he could see the faint shimmer of light along her skin. She reached out, touched his chest lightly with her fingertips, and her voice came again, low but filled with meaning. He didn't know the language, yet something inside him told him what she said. Not a greeting. Not a trade. A claim. A promise. The marketplace shifted. Aliens of many races began to bow their heads as though witnessing something sacred. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He wanted to speak, to protest, to ask what he had done, but the weight of the vessel in his hand told him he had already crossed a line he could not retreat from. The girl leaned close, her eyes searching his, as if she could read the answer in his soul, and whispered words he did not need translated. "You are mine." Daniel stepped back, confusion twisting inside him, but the crowd parted like waves before the tide. Armed guards in silver armor appeared, not to threaten him, but to shield the girl. They saluted her, their eyes flicking to him with awe and something close to fear. Whatever he had accepted, it was no small thing. And in that moment, as the market buzzed with whispers of human and mate, Daniel understood one simple, terrifying truth. He had taken a gift he did not understand, and in doing so, he had bound himself to an alien whose people saw the act as sacred. He had not just taken her offering. He had accepted her proposal, and in the heart of Terran Prime, before thousands of watching eyes, Daniel Halley became something far more dangerous than a human traitor. He became the chosen mate of a girl who was clearly more than she appeared, and whose gift had changed the course of his life forever. Daniel had faced battlefields, ambushes, and starships burning under enemy fire, but nothing had made him feel as unsteady as the look in the alien girl's eyes. She stood so close that the green glow of her gift reflected across his chest, and the quiet strength in her posture told him this was not a mistake. She believed he had chosen her. The market around them remained hushed, hundreds of eyes following his every move, whispering words he could not understand. Some faces showed awe, others fear, but none dared step between them. The guards who flanked her stood motionless, their silver armor shining under the lantern light. They did not raise their weapons, but Daniel could feel the tension in their stares. They were waiting to see what he would do next. He wanted to put the glowing vessel down, to hand it back and walk away, but some instinct told him that doing so would insult her, maybe even doom him. He swallowed hard and forced his voice to stay calm. "I don't understand," he said softly. Hoping she might at least read his tone, she tilted her head, her emerald hair spilling over one shoulder like a wave of fire and silk. Her lips curved again, and she touched the glowing vessel in his hands with delicate fingers. Then, with a voice clear enough for the crowd to hear, she spoke words in the galactic tongue, the trade language Daniel only half knew. "You accepted the binding." The word struck him like a blade. Binding. He had heard whispers of it before. Something about ancient traditions among certain species, but the details had always been vague. A binding was not a contract, not a trade, but a vow. A vow of life. His stomach tightened as the truth began to form. He had not just accepted a gift. He had accepted her. The crowd stirred again, and this time Daniel noticed how some of the older merchants bowed deeply, pressing their foreheads to the ground. Others murmured blessings, as though they had witnessed something holy. The guards lowered their spears and knelt, facing the girl. Daniel's confusion grew sharper with every passing second. Who was she that soldiers bowed to her, and strangers treated her choice as law? "Wait," Daniel muttered, taking a half-step back. "I didn't agree to this." The words were useless. The girl's smile did not fade. Instead, she reached forward, her hand resting on his arm. It was a gentle touch, but it carried the weight of chains. Her eyes never wavered as she said, "You are mine. My chosen mate. My people have witnessed." Daniel's heart pounded. Mate. The word spread through the market like fire, repeated in dozens of voices. He felt trapped, caught in a net he had never seen coming. Yet when he looked into her eyes, he found no malice, no trickery. There was only certainty, and something else he had not expected: hope. She looked at him not as a stranger, not as a soldier, but as someone she had waited for. Before he could respond, a new sound cut through the market. A horn, deep and resonant, rolled over the rooftops. The guards snapped to attention. The girl's expression darkened with sudden urgency. She spoke quickly to her soldiers in her own tongue, and they moved to form a circle around her and Daniel. The crowd scattered, fear flashing across alien faces. Daniel gritted his teeth. Trouble had found him again. The girl's hand tightened on his arm. "Enemies come," she said in broken trade speech. Her eyes blazed with defiance. "You stay with me, bound." And then, in the distance, Daniel saw shadows moving through the streets. Figures armed, armored, and dangerous, cutting their way through the fleeing market-goers. Whoever they were not here for trade. The gift in his hands pulsed brighter, as if alive, and Daniel understood that whether he wanted it or not, the choice had already been made. He was bound to her, and now her war was about to become his. The marketplace that had moments ago been alive with noise now shook with panic. Traders slammed shut their stalls, alien families rushed into the side streets, and the glow of lanterns flickered as shadows crept closer. Daniel stood rooted in place, the strange vessel heavy in his hands, its green light pulsing as if it knew danger had arrived. The alien girl did not flinch. Her emerald skin shimmered under the fading light, and her eyes burned with a fire Daniel had not seen before. She raised her arm, and the guards instantly closed ranks, forming a protective wall around them. Spears of silver energy extended from their weapons with a hiss, and the ground under Daniel's boots seemed to hum with tension. Then the attackers came into view. Dark armored figures moved like a tide, pushing through the marketplace with cruel confidence. Their armor was jagged, blackened from war, and their faces hidden behind masks that glowed with red lines. Daniel recognized the style. It belonged to the Zorath, mercenaries who sold their blades to the highest bidder. He had fought their kind before during the border wars. Brutal, efficient, they never came, without blood on their hands. The girl's voice cut sharp through the night. Zorath. Daniel tightened his grip on the vessel, anger rising in his chest. Of course it had to be them. Wherever humans went, trouble followed, and the Zorath were often at the center of it. The mercenaries spread out, forming a half circle, and one of them raised a blade crackling with red energy. "Hand over the girl," he snarled in the trade tongue. His words dripped with contempt. "Or die where you stand, human." Daniel's instincts screamed at him. He was not a diplomat. He was not a chosen anything. He was a soldier, and soldiers knew when words would fail. But before he could act, the girl stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority that made even the Zorath pause. "You dare threaten me in my city?" she said. Her tone was calm, but power pulsed in every syllable. The guards knelt slightly, ready to fight at her command. Daniel glanced at her, realization striking him hard. She wasn't just some girl. She was someone important, someone the Zorath had been sent to capture. And by accepting her gift, by standing at her side, he had just been dragged into the middle of her war. The lead mercenary laughed, a cruel sound. "Your city burns tonight. Your binding means nothing. The human will bleed first." That did it. Daniel didn't wait. His soldier's instincts took over. He dropped the vessel into the crook of one arm, freeing his right hand to pull the short combat knife he always kept hidden under his jacket. The green glow lit his face as he stepped in front of her, muscles tight and ready. "You'll have to go through me," he growled. The mercenary charged, blade raised high. Time seemed to slow. Daniel's body moved before his mind caught up, sidestepping the swing and slamming his knife into a weak point between armor plates. The mercenary cried out, stumbling back, red sparks flashing across his chest plate. The crowd gasped, but Daniel didn't stop. Another came at him, faster this time, but the guards surged forward with a roar, spears stabbing in perfect unison. Energy cracked the air as alien steel met Zorath blades. Daniel fought like the soldier he had once been. Each strike was precise, each movement fueled by the memory of battlefields where hesitation meant death. He ducked, slashed, twisted, until the ground around him was scattered with fallen enemies. Through it all, the alien girl never wavered. She stood tall behind him, her hands glowing faintly as if channeling some hidden force. Her eyes followed every move he made, and when one mercenary tried to flank him, she lifted her palm. A blast of green light shot forth, slamming the attacker into a wall with bone-shattering force. Daniel froze, staring. She had power. Real power. Their eyes met in that brief pause, and he realized something that made his stomach twist. She hadn't chosen him by mistake. She had chosen him because she needed him. And now, whether he wanted it or not, they were fighting together. The battle raged on, sparks flying, the vessel pulsing brighter in Daniel's grip. And in the center of it all, a truth burned in his mind. This was no ordinary gift. It was a bond, a weapon, and maybe even a destiny, and he was already too deep to turn back. Asterisk smoke drifted through the ruins of the market, curling between shattered stalls and flickering lights. The battle was over. The Zoroth mercenaries were dead or fleeing into the dark streets, leaving behind scorch marks, fallen armor, and silence. Daniel stood in the center, chest heaving, the glow of the strange vessel still lighting his hand. His knife dripped faintly, but his eyes were locked on the alien girl. She hadn't even broken a sweat. She walked toward him slowly, her silver and green garments untouched by dirt or ash, her hair gleaming under the half-moon. Every step she took carried grace and command. The guards around her dropped to one knee as she passed, bowing their heads until she spoke. "Rise," she said softly. Her gaze then returned to Daniel. He expected anger, maybe questions about why he had interfered. But she only looked at him with a strange calm, as if she had already known what he would do. "You fought well," she said, her words accented but clear enough in the trade tongue. "Few would stand for me against Zoroth blades." Daniel wiped his knife clean on his sleeve. "Didn't plan on it," he muttered. "They gave me no choice." Her lips curved into a faint smile, the kind that could melt steel. "There is always choice. You chose to stand beside me. You chose the binding." Daniel frowned and looked down at the vessel in his hands. The green light had dimmed but still pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. "You keep saying that word. Binding. What does it mean to you?" The girl stepped closer, stopping only an arm's length away. "To my people, the gift of life is sacred," she said. "It is given once, and when accepted, it joins two souls. Our energy, our fate, our honor become one. You cannot return it." Daniel blinked. "So when I took this thing," she nodded slowly, "you became my bonded, my chosen mate. By law, by witness, by spirit." He stared at her in disbelief. "You're saying I'm married?" Her expression softened, though a flicker of amusement touched her eyes. "In your words, yes. But it is more. The binding joins life to life. If I fall, you fall. If you bleed, I feel it." Daniel's heart thudded in his chest. That explained the strange warmth he had felt since he took the gift, the way his pulse seemed to echo hers. "You should have told me before I accepted." She tilted her head. "Would you have refused?" He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Something in her gaze made it hard to look away. There was no arrogance, no trickery, only quiet sincerity. She hadn't done this to trap him. She had done it out of faith, maybe even desperation. Before he could answer, one of the guards approached and knelt. "My lady, the scouts report more Zoroth ships landing beyond the city. We must retreat to the citadel." Daniel turned sharply. "Citadel?" The girl nodded. "My home. The heart of Terran Prime." She hesitated, then added softly, "I am Princess Alara of the Terran Dominion." The words hit Daniel like a shockwave. Princess. He had fought for colonies, smuggled supplies for rebels, seen governments rise and fall, but never had he stood face to face with a royal heir. And now she was calling him her mate. He rubbed the back of his neck, trying to think. "So let me get this straight. I just bonded myself to an alien princess. Her people bow to her. Her enemies want her dead. And now I'm part of all this?" Alira's smile widened slightly, though sadness lingered in her eyes. "Yes, Daniel Halle, you are part of this now. The binding chose you, and the stars do not make mistakes." Before he could reply, another explosion thundered in the distance. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The guards raised their weapons again, forming a circle around her. Alara looked toward the glowing horizon. "They come for me," she said quietly. Then she turned to Daniel. "And now, for you." Daniel sighed and tightened his grip on the glowing vessel. He didn't know whether to laugh or curse. He had escaped wars before, but somehow this felt different. This time, it wasn't about orders or survival. This time, it was about her dot, and as they ran toward the citadel under the burning alien sky, Daniel couldn't help but think that fate had just handed him the most dangerous gift of all. The citadel of Taran Prime rose like a mountain of light and stone. Giant spires pierced the night sky, glowing faintly with streams of green energy that pulsed like veins. The city around it was alive with movement, refugees rushing through the gates, soldiers shouting orders, defense cannons rotating toward the burning horizon. Daniel followed Princess Alera through a long corridor of crystal and metal, his boots echoing against the smooth floor. He had never seen anything like it. Everything seemed alive, humming softly with power. Inside the great hall, enormous statues stood guard figures of ancient Terran warriors holding orbs of the same green crystal that glowed inside the vessel he carried. Soldiers knelt as Alera entered, their armor shimmering like liquid silver. Some looked at Daniel with disbelief, others with silent respect. It was clear that word of the binding had already spread. Alera led him toward a high platform surrounded by soft light. "You are safe here," she said. "For now." Daniel gave a small laugh, more tired than amused. "Safe doesn't seem to follow me lately." She glanced back at him, her expression unreadable. "It follows you more than you think." Before he could ask what she meant, an older alien stepped forward. His skin was darker than hers, with golden lines running along his face like cracks of lightning. He bowed deeply. "My princess," he said in a deep voice, "the High Council demands to know if the binding is true." His eyes shifted to Daniel. "And if this human is the one?" Alera stood tall. "The Council will have its proof." She turned to Daniel. "Place your hand on the vessel." He hesitated. "Last time I touched it, my life changed forever." Her voice softened. "Then what is one more change?" He sighed, stepped forward, and pressed his palm against the glowing surface. The moment his skin met the crystal, a beam of green light shot upward, filling the hall with brilliance. Energy rippled through the floor. Every statue, every wall pulse, glowed in response as though the citadel itself was awakening. Gasps filled the air. The old alien dropped to one knee. "By the stars. The prophecy speaks true." Daniel blinked. "Prophecy?" Alera's eyes glowed softly as she looked at him. Long ago, it was said that a foreign soul from beyond the known stars would carry the light of renewal. He would bond with the blood of the royal line and restore balance to Taran Prime. Daniel shook his head. "That's insane. I'm just a mechanic, a soldier. I don't restore anything." But the counselor rose and bowed even lower. "You are the chosen of the gift, the vessel awakened for you. No other could have touched it and lived." Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine. He hadn't realized how serious this was for them. He looked at Alera, searching for any hint of doubt. But she met his gaze with quiet certainty. "You may not believe it," she said gently, "but our world has waited for you." He looked around at the guards, the statues, the endless glow of alien energy. "You're saying I was meant to come here? That all this was supposed to happen?" Alera nodded once. "Destiny does not ask for permission. It only waits for courage." Her words hit him harder than any weapon. For a long moment, Daniel stood in silence, unsure if he felt anger, disbelief, or awe. Then the sound of distant explosions shattered the moment. A messenger burst through the doors, breathing hard. "Princess, the outer walls are breached. The Zorath are advancing with heavy artillery." Panic spread through the hall. Soldiers scrambled to their posts. The counselor looked to Alera in fear. Alera turned to Daniel, her eyes fierce and calm all at once. "You wished for purpose, human. Then fight beside me. The binding joins our lives, let it also join our battle." Daniel gripped the glowing vessel tighter, feeling its warmth course through his veins. He had no reason to trust prophecy or fate, but he trusted what he had seen, the strength in her eyes, the courage in her voice. He took a deep breath. Then let's make them regret coming here. Alara smiled, the faintest spark of pride lighting her face. Then it begins. Asterisk. The night sky above Turin Prime burned with streaks of red fire. The Zorith warships filled the heavens, their black hulls blotting out the stars, raining down beams of destruction. The Citadel's shields flickered under the assault, and the once bright towers cracked under pressure. Inside the halls, alarms screamed while soldiers rushed past Daniel and Princess Alara. Preparing for the last defense of their home, Daniel stood at the base of the great chamber steps, gripping the glowing vessel tightly. The pulse of its light beat in rhythm with his heart now, warm and alive, as though the strange object understood what was coming. His mind was calm, clearer than it had ever been in battle. He wasn't here because of duty, or money, or orders. He was here because of her. Alara moved beside him, her hair flowing like green fire under the flickering lights. The energy of the Citadel flowed through her veins, faint symbols glowing along her skin. The outer wall has fallen, she said quietly. We fight at dawn, or we die before it. Daniel nodded. Then we make it count. The old counselor hurried forward, holding a silver staff etched with ancient runes. Princess, the core chamber still lives. If the binding is strong, the vessel can be awakened fully. But it must be done together. Alara turned to Daniel, her eyes soft but certain. You and I, the binding was never just ritual. It was power shared, strength divided between two hearts. Daniel frowned. And what happens if we fail? Then the Citadel falls, she said simply, and our bond ends with it. There was no hesitation in her tone, no fear. She had already accepted her fate. And somehow, that gave Daniel courage. He had spent years fighting wars that meant nothing. But this was something worth standing for. They climbed the stairs to the core chamber, a massive dome of living crystal. At its center floated a heart-shaped core of light, pulsing with green energy that reflected off every surface. The hum of power vibrated in their bones. Alara stepped close and placed her hand on the core. Together, she said softly. Daniel raised the vessel and pressed it against the glowing surface. For a moment, there was silence, and then the world exploded into light. Energy surged through them both, connecting nerve to nerve, heartbeat to heartbeat. Daniel gasped as visions flashed through his mind, memories that weren't his. He saw Alara as a child, standing before her dying mother. He saw her people bowing as she took the throne, her tears hidden behind a brave smile. He saw the prophecy, whispered through generations. When the stars fall silent, one beyond the veil shall bring back the light. And through it all, he felt her emotions, fear, hope, loneliness. And now, something deeper, trust. When the light faded, the core chamber glowed brighter than ever. The vessel in his hand dissolved, its energy flowing into their joined palms. Alara's eyes shimmered with golden light. You are part of my soul now, she whispered. Your strength is mine. The floor shook violently. The Zorith had broken through the gates. Explosions echoed closer. Daniel drew in a breath and grinned. Then let's give them a reason to run. They emerged onto the outer platform as enemy soldiers swarmed through the broken walls. The air was filled with smoke and dust. Daniel lifted his hand. Green energy flickered around his arm, alive and crackling. Alara raised hers, and together they unleashed a wave of power that tore through the attackers like a storm. The binding had awakened. Every step, Daniel sent shockwaves through the ground. His movements synced perfectly with Alara's, as if they had trained together all their lives. She moved like lightning, he followed like thunder. The sky above burst open as the Citadel's weapons reignited, powered by their shared energy. The Zorith forces faltered. Some dropped their weapons. Others turned and fled. The great warships above began to retreat as the green light of the Citadel spread across the city like sunrise. When the last shot faded, Silence returned. The battlefield was littered with fallen metal and broken armor. Alara lowered her hand slowly, breathing hard. Daniel stood beside her, his chest rising and falling, the glow between them fading to a gentle warmth. She looked up at him, her voice quiet. "You were not meant for my world. Yet you saved it." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe your world needed a little chaos from mine." Alara laughed softly, the first real laugh he had heard from her. "Then chaos has a home here now." He glanced toward the sunrise breaking over the towers, the smoke clearing in the wind. "So, what happens next?" She stepped closer, eyes shining with warmth. "Next," she said, "we build again, together." Daniel looked at her, the alien princess who had once been a stranger, whose gift had changed his life forever. He reached out, took her hand gently, and said, "Then let's start with that." Above them, the sun rose over Terran Prime, golden light blending with the emerald glow of rebirth. The war was over. The prophecy fulfilled. And two worlds, human and alien, stood bound not by fate, but by choice.